Hi, everyone. Scott Martin here, Global Student Solutions. The road to college can feel overwhelming. Trust me, you're not alone. That's why we created Global Student Solutions. Our courses, resources, counseling services to international schools, and even the Global Student Voices podcast that you're listening to are all designed to give you clarity, encouragement, and real direction. We want every student to feel supported, understood, and confident in what's next. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm so excited. If you're an MK or connected to an international school, you're TCK, this is a great episode for you because we're getting to talk to the writer and director of a fantastic film, Ben Between Africa. There's an opportunity to see it here in over the next couple of weeks here in the 2025 Christmas season, and we're getting to talk to the director, Ari Ali. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited, and I want to start because you've done a great job with the promo for this. So I want to start with the promo so that folks can have a chance to kind of know what we're talking about, and then we'll get into it and we get to know each other a little bit. I'm excited for this.
Dear Mommy,
dear
and Dad.
parents,
Dear folks,
Dear Ben, I really want to know what happened to you. This mysterious uncle I know so little about.
he was a real knowledge seeker.
He was very into storytelling.
His mind was just always going.
I think he would be fascinated by you.
Do you know the specifics around how Ben died?
That's always been kind of a mystery.
Is there a connection between your death, the final letter you wrote, and this feeling of being fractured as a family? My mom and her siblings grew up in Ethiopia.
There was a lot of opposition towards missionaries on the part of the Orthodox Church, But the emperor, he knew what they could do.
all the missionaries said, we just send our kids off to boarding school. And so there we were just abandoned.
At an early age, when you're sent away like that, it affects you the rest of your life.
When you guys came to America, both you and Ben immediately wanted to go back.
Yeah, we were like fish out of water.
Please write soon. I'm homesick for Ethiopia.
He missed it. He wanted to go back to Ethiopia. So much of who he was from there.
So the late 1960s and early 70s was really a time of student revolution. But by the time Ben returns, he's now seen as someone who's no longer welcomed.
Times don't change for you. You have to walk with the times. So he didn't do that.
Known as Ben to his friends.
We knew you between Africa.
My dear Ben, you were real. You are family. When I started this search, I hadn't considered the loss I might feel.
Where the search for the truth is greater than the fear, you're going to bring healing to that whole system. And that's what you're doing.
Remembering is so important. I'm so glad you came.
Wow. If the film is anything like the introduction, that's fantastic. And I want you to do the story on All My Family, because that's just spectacular. So Ari, is this Ben, is this your uncle?
Yeah, so Ben was my mother's older brother. There's 2 years between them. He was born in 1950 and she was born in 1952. And they grew up kind of in lockstep with each other. They both were preschool, kindergarten when they left America and went to Ethiopia. And then she was always kind of like 2 steps behind him, like growing up. So they were very close growing up. And I didn't know anything about him. And so the film is kind of my learning about who he was through his own words, because I found a bunch of letters that he wrote. And then also understanding the bigger picture of my family's time in Ethiopia as Mennonite missionaries. But Ben is the central question of the film, because growing up, I didn't know that much about him. And one of the questions that initially led me to want to make this film is, why didn't I know anything about him? Why didn't my mom talk about him? Why was he this hush-hush subject in our household? And just kind of unpacking that and trying to better understand, the things we do not talk about in our families.
Yeah, it's huge. I was really captured even just from the like I want to tell this story and get this word out because I think it connects with a lot of the people that I get to talk to on a day-to-day basis. But even just watching the trailer and seeing that, the not fitting in part, and I grew up in Kenya myself, so neighbors to Ethiopia, and that experience, the boarding school situation, and getting to go home to America, which didn't feel like going home at all. It really struck a chord. And so, what was, I guess, well, how does this tie to your own background? Did you grow up also blending cultures, or what's your bent on kind of even the exploratory side of it?
Yeah, so I didn't realize that I was a TCK until a third culture kid until I made this film. And so my mom grew up in Ethiopia, and then she moved to America for college. And she immediately, like I say in the trailer, she immediately wanted to go back because she just didn't fit in. And in the film, she says, they felt like fish out of water. And although she presented as white and American, like all of her influences throughout her life came from growing up in Ethiopia in boarding school. And so her and Ben's number one goal once they graduated from college was to get back there as fast as possible. And then kind of the heartbreak, I think, for a lot of people who grow up overseas is returning as an adult and then kind of realizing that like you don't belong in that place either. And so one of the interesting things about making this film is I was constantly seeing how Ben and Marion's world, my mom's name is Marion, it's this upside down thing. The world that you're supposed to be from, you're not. And then the world that, you want to go back to doesn't necessarily want you, especially during the mid-70s, which there's a lot of the world was going through revolutions. And when my mom couldn't get back into Ethiopia, she decided to become a Peace Corps volunteer and go to Yemen. And so she met my dad there almost right away, and she ended up staying there for over a decade. And she had 3 kids, and we grew up there. We lived there, and I'm half Yemeni, so I grew up with this kind of like bicultural experience. And I can really relate to the feeling of A, I blend in everywhere I go, and B, I don't belong anywhere. So that was something that I was not prepared to relate to with my mom. You would think it's so obvious, but I didn't quite understand that was something we had in common until making this film.
Every day, students tell us how much lighter they feel after getting the guidance they needed. Like someone finally understands what they're facing. And that's what we do at GSS. We walk with you. We don't just advise. If you or someone you care about needs that support, visit theglobalstudentsolutions.com. Your journey matters, and we're here to help. Yeah, that's so powerful. I met and married my wife, and she didn't realize she was a TCK, and I didn't really realize she was a TCK when we met. I knew there was something about her that was different than the other girls I'd met, but she didn't have that kind of, I grew up in Kenya and was at a school that talked about being a TCK and trained us and prepared us for the transition. And she didn't have that. She just thought, there's something weird about me. I don't fit in. I don't fit in at home. These are not my people anymore. And she actually, in high school, went and studied abroad on her own. So even her siblings didn't have a similar background, and they're not TCKs. They don't get her at all. And she just found herself really connected. Like you said, you fit in everywhere, like you can adapt, and, we can move culture to culture or different places and somehow make our way. But we're never quite home, or never feel like right at home anywhere. And there's a lot of pain and a lot of mourning that goes along with that, especially as we get older and realize the gap. I don't want to say what we're missing, because I feel like there's great opportunities, but there's something.
I know my uncles will talk about the fact that when they were growing up, the other missionary parents were their aunts and uncles, but they didn't grow up knowing their own aunts and uncles. And so a lot of them now in their midlife, have made a concentrated effort to reconnect with like biological family, as a way of like, okay, I may have had this wonderful childhood growing up overseas, but I also missed out on like American traditions, American holidays, like things that are so nostalgic to people who stay here their entire lives. And so I think it is this journey of like mourning what you lost, and then also really understanding that you have some superpowers because you grew up this way as well.
Yeah, I use the term superpowers all the time too, because I think it is an absolute superpower, particularly if if it's a strength to be developed, and when you do, it is amazing. But yeah, it's just tough. So the blend, there's also your family, biological family, your mom's family growing up is Mennonite, is that right?
Yeah.
So is there also kind of a religious and that culture piece that also weighs in, especially now with you and your family?
Yeah, so rediscovering my Mennonite heritage has been one of the sweetest gifts that this film has given me, because when my mom moved to Yemen and married my dad, like the way that she was raised, she says she's left some of it behind, and there are aspects of it that she wanted to keep. She says she's culturally Mennonite, but then there were some aspects of it that she decided that weren't for her. And so we grew up overseas, and then when we moved to America, we didn't live close to like a Mennonite stronghold, a Mennonite hotspot. And then so that was a part of my identity and my culture that I reconnected with through the process of making this film. And I think I am on like the same line as her, as to where there's a lot of aspects of the Mennonite belief system and the culture that it just really resonates with me. One of the things I've really loved is over the course of the last year, I have been traveling around America showing the film in different communities. And I prioritize showing the film to the communities that the story is about at the core center of the film. So, MKs for sure, but then I get really specific and I'm like, MKs that grew up in East Africa during the mid-century who are part of the Mennonite, so I got really, really specific. Yeah. And when I visit, different places in America that have a lot of Mennonites and I show the film to that specific audience, it is such a treat for me because I get the most laughs. Like there's just things about the humor in the film that just really resonates, or there's like there's things that other people don't think are funny that might think are a little sad, but then former MK Mennonite kids will laugh and they just kind of have this inside knowing. Yeah. There's this one shot near the very beginning of the film where there's a big metal oil barrel. And I assumed that barrel was something that was just from my mom's generation of going overseas. And I showed the film to an audience in DC that were more my age and younger, so 40s and younger. And when the shot of the barrel came on the screen, there was a murmur across the audience. And I was so surprised to hear MKs who were in their 20s and 30s remember their own barrels that they shipped stuff. Yep. And so to me, there's been, so I didn't grow up a missionary kid, but there's been things in the film that other MKs really resonate with that I could have never guessed, that were such a huge part of their lives and their identities that they were part of the fabric of the world. And so I included them, but I didn't know that they would touch such a string with these people. And the barrel is just one of the first auditory moments where the whole audience just reacted. And I was like, wow, that's really beautiful, Yeah. It's a point of relation amongst many different generations of MKs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really until just very recently that the barrel part of our story, and I didn't realize it was trigger's not the right word, but I didn't realize that I had such a strong attached connection to the barrel until I went over with a cousin to do kind of an exploratory mission in East Africa, setting up partnerships with universities, and along the way, our bags got destroyed because of how we were traveling. And I immediately bought a barrel. Yeah. And we packed everything up and I shipped it back in a barrel. And he just thought this is so strange. And it never even, it became kind of a joke because we had to roll a barrel through town to get back to our housing and all that. And I didn't get a metal barrel because it's modern day and I didn't want to carry a metal barrel and I wanted to but it's plastic. So, but it's still the same kind of there's something, I don't know, there's something weird about it. Yeah. And my high school buddies, when they hear the story, they laugh with me, but it doesn't seem that it's not befuddling. Yeah. Like it was to my other friends. As you're what impact or where do you want to see your film having the biggest impact, or is there an impact in mind, or is this a self-discovery and you're letting us join you in it and that it's already served its purpose in that sense? Or did you have a bigger vision, or now that it's done, do you have a bigger vision for what it can do?
Yeah, when I first made the film, the things I was interested in is intergenerational grief and how grief can get passed down, without any words being spoken or without understanding that the grief is getting passed down. And so when I first made the film, my initial thing I was exploring was what was the grief of the previous generation and what have I inherited of that grief. And so when I was showing it, one of the biggest pieces of feedback I was getting from people was that they really loved that the film was allowing them to have conversations with their families. Because although the film is so hyper specific to my personal story, and I think there's something in it that allows it then to be relatable. Like it's like you would think that it being so specific would make it harder to relate, but because it is so focused and so detailed on my family's experience, it has made it incredibly relatable. And the thing that a lot of people initially related to in the film was having something that needs to be talked about and then trying to find a route to talk about it. And I think the film, I've been told by a lot of people, is giving people an excuse to start that conversation. So they'll show it to a family member, or they'll go see it with a family member, and then they'll use it as a jumping off point to kind of like softball into like, in our own family, we have this thing. What do you think about it? And so almost using my family and our story as an excuse to start. But then what I didn't realize until very recently is I was very surprised and touched that the film resonated so deeply with contemporary MKs. Because the film takes place in the 1950s and 60s, and I was under the impression that it would be that generation that would relate to it the most. But it's incredible how much the contemporary group of MKs are relating to the subject matter. And then to me, it's almost as if they're watching like the elders have and being able to say like, oh, the MKs before us went through the same things that we're going through. And although the times have changed, the feelings about it haven't changed.
Right.
And what I didn't also realize is I didn't realize that there aren't any films out there, or maybe there's not a lot of films out there where it's just a documentary and it's just an observation of a family. And it's not trying to, there's no agenda. I had no agenda. I didn't dive into the MK experience with like, these are the things that need to be said about what MKs go through and how they feel about it. Like I never had a list, and I didn't have any organizations behind this film who were like, we will support you making this film as long as you check these boxes for us. Yeah. And so it's an authentic story of a family. And I don't know if there's a lot of resources like that for MKs that are films. Maybe there are books, but I've been told there's not a ton of documentaries that just allow a story to be told without some sort of like, and then here's what we want you to take away from it, or here is our moral or principles we want you to walk away from. It's literally like, here's just a story of a family, like take from it what you will, resonate with it, what resonates back, but then leave what doesn't. So I've had a couple of people stand up at screenings and say like, this wasn't my experience at all. And then you're like, okay, that's the way that things go. Some things relate, some things don't, Right. But then there's other people who say like word for word, this could be my own family story, Yeah,
I think that's so special. And I think I've been working with, I was an MK. I've been working with TCKs or MKs and TCKs since I was in college. Like I started my first support group for TCKs while I was a student, and have continued to do that now into my latter 50s. And I've never seen a documentary that does this. I haven't read any of the books, and I'm sure there are some books, but I'm not as big a reader. I like to see it. Yeah. And I think I'm really excited to share this with students that I'm working with and get their reactions. And I'm really excited to share it with my family over the holiday because I'm thinking about my son who grew up in Indonesia as a TCK, and the opportunity for his extended family. I hope they'll watch it because I would love to have that conversation kind of as an insight, in a way, an insight into our family, or at least a catalyst for asking questions. I think it's just so hard. Getting to know TCKs is really challenging, and we want to be known. But a lot of times the questions are just so ridiculous that it's hard to have a real conversation. We just don't know where to start in telling our own story. And I love that you've told Ben's story. I love that you've told, that in a way it helped you understand your own story. But as the gift to us is a catalyst to tell the importance of telling our stories and understanding our stories and understanding our histories is so critical. If there's you didn't have an agenda going in. If there's a lesson or if there's a takeaway that you wanted to leave with people now, like if there's something you want TCKs to know, if this is an opportunity to say, I hope you get this from this, or what would that be, or what would those be?
Yeah, I truly believe that everybody has a story, and I think my film might be proof of that, because I took one thing that happened in our family and I built out this tapestry around it, and that tapestry included mid-century Ethiopian politics, like Haile Selassie. And I drew ties between Ben's life, like Haile Selassie, this emperor who was on his own life trajectory, but the decisions he made deeply affected this one Mennonite boy missionary kid's life. And then the interwovenness between that. And then when Ben got to college, the civil rights movement, and how that completely changed his own way of seeing his own life and what he wanted to do with it. So every single person alive is going through this really beautiful story. And I think you're completely right that it is so hard to share your story when you have to give so much background before anyone can even understand the basics of your life. Like when they say where did you grow up? Even me, I don't have anywhere near as complex a story as a lot of MKs and TCKs, but there's no way to understand me without me saying well, my mom grew up a missionary kid in Ethiopia. And if I don't start there, my own story doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so I think the one thing I want people to know is you do have a really interesting story, and trust that one of the most beautiful things that we can give each other is our attention. And trust that the right people who are meant to be your friends and meant to be in your life will give you that time and attention to hear your story. And the ones that don't have the ability to be patient enough or to be interested enough, it's not for you. That person's not for you to make a deep connection with, and it's okay. There's nothing that you need to hold back or hide. But the right people will sit down and say well, then what happened? And I think that we live in this economy where we talk about so many things, being important, but to me, each other's time and attention is the most beautiful gift.
Yeah.
And so just wait for the right people to come around. The other night I went to dinner and the guy sitting across from me, didn't know him, never met him before. And one of the first things I said is I grew up in Yemen. And he said, oh, I grew up in Indonesia. Would have never guessed that. And we ended up connecting on his TCK experience and then my family's MK experience. And that's just if I hadn't been honest about where I grew up, I would have never known that we had that in common. And so I don't know, where you're from and the life you've lived is beautiful. Even the hard parts, that's what makes you the most relatable. And so just dig into it and don't be embarrassed or shy to share it,
And that's fantastic. Now I want to ask, okay, we're in Indonesia because that's where I taught and where my son grew up. So see how it just automatically connection. I think a lot of times my observation is a lot of the students I'm working with, I don't know, kind of want to hide that part of the story because they want to fit in and they want to be a part of something. And I think the authentic fitting in is authentically telling your story and being that unique kind of weirdo that we are, is how we connect, and I've often commented that I wish that people would just wear signs I'm not going to be your friend, so I wouldn't waste time. And I think this, when we tell our story, obviously we're not walking up and hi, nice to meet you. I grew up in Yemen, and that's not how we start the conversation, but getting there fairly quickly and just allowing when people it goes over their head and they're just asking stupid questions or just kind of tuning you out and moving on to another conversation. Let's think of that as their sign. And there's somebody there are good people. Don't let them dissuade you from being authentically who you are. And I can't believe how quickly this conversation has gone. I need to honor your time and honor listeners' time, but I'm so grateful that you've told your story through this, told your family story, and given us an example. I know I was with a filmmaker this summer that works with international schools and helping students tell their stories. And I hope this will be a great example. I'm going to send send the link to him as well, and just say, here would be a great one to share. Because I think it gives a way for students to authentically see how a story can be told. And I love the way, I love the way you did it. Just, here's the story. There's no, it's not preachy. And for MKs, we're used to lots of preachy stuff. And this one isn't. And I think that's great. So listeners, tune in, follow Ari. We'll have the links to the film and to you and the other projects that you're working on. We're cheering for you. Thank you for serving us, TCK, serving us well. And I kind of starting to think about what I want to do with my family stories, and how I want to capture them and put them kind of in a time capsule, too. So I appreciate the inspiration. It's so great to meet you, and hope for you the best, greatest success and impact. Thanks again. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I truly appreciate you being here, and I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit. And don't forget to visit theglobalstudentsolutions.com to learn more about our courses, resources, and the ways that we support students around the world. See you next episode.